All right, we'll say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Meir and Yitzchok, Meir and Rachel Gold in memory of Yonah, Tzvi, Ben Yosef, Chaim, Elazar, HaKohen, and Noam Leah Efron in honor of and in celebration of the 98th birthday of Noam's grandfather, Yosef Hershel ben Mordechai Halevi. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, and Hashem will have an aliyah, and in merit Hashem, Noam's grandfather will be zocheh to celebrate many, many birthdays on Me'ah Ve'esrim Shanim Tovos. Also, a baruch haba to Moshe ben Sion Pacino visiting us from Eretz Yisrael. So wonderful to have you back. Baruch haba. Also, with that, let us begin. So we have an incredible daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is daf Hey. We are picking up in Meir Hashem on the bottom of Dalid Amud Beis. So remember again, we left off a little bit mid-sugya. So in the mid-sugya we left off with was as follows. We have a 5-way machlokas about the prohibition of Bal Ta'acher. Right? Remember, here's what we know. We know that halacha l'maisa, one is not permitted to go ahead and delay bringing a carbon. The shaila is, or for that matter, again, it's not just carbon. It's really with anything. It's really, at the end of the day, any obligation which you have upon you, one is not permitted to go ahead and delay. So the shaila that we're dealing with is how long or how much time must elapse in order to trigger the prohibition of Bal Ta'acher. So for that, we have a 5-way machlokes. So the Gemara says, remember, we then left off with the Gemara that said as follows, that we left off with a topic that said that halacha l'maisa, how do we know that atzeres, that Shavuos, has a tashlumin period, right? Ultimately, again, that after Shavuos, you have 7 days with which to go ahead and make up the carbon. From where do we know that? So the Gemara quoted the pasuk, B'chag hamatzos, b'chag hashavuos, or b'chag hasukos. And the Torah says that we are going ahead and comparing the Yom Tov of Shavuos to the Yom Tov of Pesach. Just like Pesach has 7 days, and therefore again there is tashlumin all 7 days, so too Shavuos has 7 days of tashlumin as well. So also we left off, the Gemara says, 2, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Let's just pick up over here. Shmini regel bifnei atzmoi. The Gemara said, but 1 second. I'm sorry. So the Gemara says, why not go ahead and compare it? One more piece. Why not compare Shavuos to Sukkos? Just like Sukkos has 8 days. And therefore, again, go ahead and give tashlumin for 8 days to the Yom Tov of Shavuos. To which the Gemara says Sukkos doesn't have 8 days. Why? Because Shmini Atzeres is a regel bifnei atzmo. Shmini Atzeres is its own Yom Tiv. To which the Gemara says, maybe we should say, so the Gemara says, Amor Darminer Shmini regel bifnei atzmo, le'in pizar kishab. This is what we left off with. Yes, it's true, Shmini Atzeres is its own Yom Tiv, but maybe we should say it's only its own Yom Tiv in terms of Pizar Kishav. So we'll say, Rashi over here, last Rashi in the Daf says, Pizar Kishav, we learned this back in Sukkah. Shmini Atzeres is a regel b'fnei atzmo in these 6 ways. Pious, it has its own lottery, that the Kohanim go ahead and do another lottery in order to determine who is going to do the avoda. Zman, it gets a shechianu. So Reish, regel, it's its own Yom Tiv. Kuf, it gets its own carbon. Shin, it gets its own shira. And ultimately, Beis, it gets its own bracha. That was talking about, again, the bracha that they used to go ahead and give the king. Avalein tashlumin, devri akal tashlumin, the Rishonu. So we'll say, Shmini Atzeres occupies this fascinating spot in halacha, where on one hand, again, Shmini Atzeres is a regel bifnei atzmo. It is its own Yom Tiv, as evidenced by Pizar Kishav, but also it is an extension of the Yom Tov of Sukkos. Why? Because at the end of the day, the Gemara says, if you were to not bring the karbanos of Sukkos over the course of Yom Tov, you would be permitted to go ahead and bring them on Shmini Atzeres. This not. Here we go. Mishelo Chag Yom Tov Harishon Shachag Chogeg Eskol Haregel Yom Tov Ha'acharon Shachag. Anyone who did not go ahead and offer up, let's say the Shalmi Chagiga, on the first day of Sukkos, has the ability to go ahead and offer up the Shalmi Chagiga over the duration of Sukkos and Shmini Atzeres. So as much as Shmini Atzeres is its own Yom Tiv, at the end of the day, it's connected to Sukkos. So therefore, both going back to our original question, the pasuk says, "B'chag hamatzos, b'chag hashavos, b'chag hasukos." The Gemara wanted to say we're going to compare Shavuos to Pesach for what reason? Just like Pesach has 7 days of Tashlumin, 7 days over which you could offer up the karbanos of the day, so too Shavuos has 7 makeup days after the Yom Tov as well. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand, it's all the same pasuk. Instead of comparing it to Pesach, why don't you compare it to Sukkos and give it what? Give it what? An extra day. To which the Gemara says, Tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta. So Rabbi said, literally, if you try to grab onto too much, you end up grabbing nothing at all. But if you grab a little bit, you could hold on to everything. Which Rabbi say is the way that Chazal kind of codified the halachic concept, namely, that when you have the ability to compare one thing to two other things, right? So when you have when you're making a comparison, so the idea would be to make the comparison to the less ambitious item, because the less ambitious item, if that's the right word, really less ambitious, is to the smaller item. Why? Because the larger item contains both the smaller item and the larger item. So, for example, to go ahead and if you have a choice between comparing it to Pesach and comparing it to Sukkos, so Sukkos includes Pesach as well. In other words, Sukkos is 8. So you know that 7 is the safe bet because both of the other Yomim Tovim have 7. So that's Tafasta Meruba Lo Tafasta, Tafasta Muat Tafasta. And therefore, again, we're going to compare it ultimately again to Pesach and not to Sukkos. We're going to say two pieces about this. Number one, we know in general the Pizar Kishav, we spoke about this back in Sukkah, that from a Shmini Atzeres perspective, we saw the Sanzra, the Divrei Chaim says something so beautiful. He says, Pizar Kishav, those words are not just a mnemonic, they have a meaning as well. Pizar is like mifuzar, something that is scattered. Kshav means things makshiv, things that you are listening to. So the Sanzarav said something so beautiful. He explained that over the Yamim Noraim, there are so many messages and so many things that I'm focusing on that often, and the problem just is when there's so much, kind of like tafasta meruba lo tafasta, there's so much going on. Shmini Atzeres is the day for me to organize the scattered messages. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me one additional regel, one additional Yom Tiv, to be able to consolidate all of the profound messages of the season. That's Pizar, to take all that which is scattered and to go ahead and consolidate it. But the truth is, we can build on that a little bit, and that's not just the din. It's not just the din by Shmini Atzeres, right? It's a din ultimately in everyday life as well. We're pulled in so many different directions and involved in so many different things, and our head lives in so many different worlds. And often, we have so many different dreams, goals, and aspirations. There's a lot of Pizar Kishav, right? There's a lot of scattered stuff, all good, all beautiful, all wonderful, but scattered. And if I don't take the time to consolidate, if I don't take the time to organize, if I don't take the time to take all of those great ideas, all of those haschalas, and somehow go ahead and organize them into a comprehensive life plan, I end up spinning my wheels throughout life. Not spinning my wheels with chait. I'll say that the reality is in life that a lot of times we spin our wheels with good things. We're involved in good things. We just don't have a plan to execute those good things. We just don't have a plan to advance those good things. They're all wonderful. But I'm living in Pizar Kishav. Life can become about Pizar Kishav. Got to take the time to consolidate and to go ahead and take all that which is scattered and to go ahead and consolidate it and craft it into a comprehensive life plan. Because Shmini Atzeres, Pizar Kishav, is a regel bifnei atzmo. It has to be a regel bifnei atzmo, but not just once a year. A regel bifnei atzmo each and every day. To take time to consolidate and create. Consolidate all of the ideas, all of the dreams, all the aspirations, and create a life plan for their execution. One last piece. This is very important to go on record. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta is a din in Gemara. It is not a din in life. Right? In life, we live with tafasta meruba tafasta. Go big. We spoke about this on Shabbos. go big. Go big. There are many people who live life always going ahead and saying, tafasta muat, right? I'll reach for what I can grab and that's it. And the yesod in life is always to reach for something that's a little bit further than where you're holding right now. Right? If all you reach for is that which is in arm's length, then at the end of the day, you don't really accomplish all that much. The goal in life is to push yourself just a little bit, to borrow the model from Bas Paro, right? From Bitya. What did Bitya Bas Paro do? She extended and she reached for something that was a little bit out of her reach. And Baruch, for the basket of Moshe Rabbeinu, Baruch Hashem, she did it. Because without her doing that, perhaps Klal Yisrael would have never had a Moshe Rabbeinu. You always have to reach a little bit further than what you think you can do. You always have to reach a little bit further out of your comfort zone. So tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta works beautifully on Rosh Hashana Daf Dalit Amud Beis. It does not work for life. For life, it has to be tafasta meruba. Go big, grab a lot, and the Meir Tashin you'll be zocha to tafasta. The Gemara goes weiter. Elamai hilchasa kasi rachmana lechag asukos. So I will say. So now it turns out that in this pasuk, right, which compares the three regalim, so ultimately we are comparing Shavuos to Pesach, but not comparing Shavuos to Sukkos. Okay, so at the end of the day, but yet they're all three mentioned in the same pasuk. So if you're going to tell me you're comparing Shavuos to Pesach, the teaching just like Pesach has 7 days of Tashlumin, so too Shavuos has 7 days of Tashlumin. So what does Sukkah bring to the table in this pasuk? Right? What comparison can you glean between Sukkos and Shavuos? I'll tell you why. So the Gemara says, the Torah is coming to compare Sukkos to Pesach. How so? Top of Hey Medalif. Ma chagamatzos ta'un lina. But it's very interesting. Just like on Pesach, you have to stay in Yerushalayim. Av chagasukos ta'un lina. So too on Sukkos, you have to stay in Yerushalayim. They're both saying. Now, what does this mean? You have to stay in Yerushalayim. This is very interesting. This is not talking about the night of Pesach. Obviously, the night of Pesach, you have to stay in Yerushalayim. Why? What are you doing the night of Pesach? You're eating Karban Pesach. This is talking about the first night of Chalamayid. That the first night, one day of Pesach, right? The first night of Chalamayid, which is the second night of Pesach, there is a din to stay in Yerushalayim. Look at Rashi. Ta'on lina leil cholol shamoed. First night of Chalamayid Pesach, there is a din of staying in Yerushalayim. So you celebrate the first day of Pesach in Yerushalayim. You think you're going home Matzah Yom Tov, the first night of Chalamayid? No. You stay in Yerushalayim the first night of Chalamayid. So the Gemara says, just like you stay the first night of Chalamayid Pesach in Yerushalayim, so too there is a din of Lina to stay the first night of Chalamayid Sukkos in Yerushalayim as well. It was a halavai, we will be Zocha, Emir Hashem Bekarov. So the Gemara says, V'hasam minalon, and how do we know that by Pesach? So there's an obligation of Lina on the first night of Chalamayid, the second night of Pesach. So I'll say, here we go. D'chsiv ufanisa baboker v'halachta la'alacha. The pasuk says, and you will wake up in the morning and you'll go back to your tent. Or I should say, ufanisa baboker. You'll turn away in the morning and go back to your tent. Rashi says, ufanisa baboker b'yamtiv lo ka'amar kra shari hu yom shechiyuvo le'ra'os ba'azara. So we'll say this is fascinating. When the pasuk says, by the way, just the context over here, this is talking about, right? So when it says you'll get up in the morning, right? You'll turn away in the morning and go back to your tent. Go away in the morning, go back to your tent means you'll leave the Beis Hamikdash. You'll leave the Beis Hamikdash and go back home. The Gemara says that can't be referring to the first day of Pesach. Why can't it be referring to the first day of Pesach? Because you will say, what's the mitzvah on the first day of Pesach? Aliyah l'regel, Ri'iyas Pnei HaMikdash. Right, there's an obligation to be in the Beis HaMikdash on the first day of Pesach, on the first day of Yom Tiv. So therefore, when the pasuk says, Ufanisa baboker ve'alachto l'alecha, you could turn away from the Mikdash and go back home. By definition, that must be referring to what? Second day of Yom Tiv. V'tanakama Rabbi Shimon Elazar. So we'll say good. That finishes that piece. V'tanakama Rabbi Shimon Elazar. Tashul Mulatzaras Minalahu. So we'll say the Tanakama. Remember, the Tanakama held that when are you in violation of Al Ta'acher? after 3 regalim, right? But he doesn't require what? He doesn't require what? For to be in order of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. So the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon, right? Rabbi Shimon, it's not really Rabbi, it's just Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says that you require the 3 regalim, but you require them in order. So the Gemara says, Tashlumin la'atzeres minaluhu. From where do they learn the idea that Shavuos has a 7-day makeup period after Yom Tiv? So nafkalu, we'll say, by the way, I just want to mention, I think Moshe brought this up to me after Shir yesterday. You know, we have a zecher to this practice, which is many have the minhag not to say tachnun for this. Right, Moshe, was that you who brought this up to me? Okay, I'm sorry. You say it. Okay, so, all right. It was someone in the front over here. Right? This is the source of the minhag not to say tachnun for the 7 days after Shavuos. You know, both say it's interesting. No one ever questions minhagim not to say tachnun, right? They'll challenge every single other tenant in Yiddishkeit, right? Why do you have to do this, right? This? When it comes to tachnun, okay, right? Everybody just like moves forward. So just if you ever were wondering why it is that sometimes we don't, there are different minhagim not to say tachnun 7 days after Shavuos, it's this. It's because the 7 days after Tashlumin, after Shavuos, were Tashlumin for the carbon of Shavuos. So the Gemara goes right there. So where do they learn out this concept from? Where do the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon learn this out from? So the Gemara says, Nafkalahu miditani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. They learn out from the following idea. The Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, Amra Torah, listen to this, we'll say this is fascinating. Mane Yamim, Vikidesh Chodesh. So we'll say, listen to this. Count days and establish the new month. So I'll say, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Mani yamim, shnemar ad chodesh yamim, v'kidesh chodesh b'karbanos. So I'll say, listen to this. A month is established by a certain number of days and not by a certain number of hours. This is very important because even though when we bench Rosh Chodesh, we announce the Molad. Say the Molad for the month of Cheshvan is going to be on, Tuesday night, 12 o'clock and 4 Chalakim. So when it comes to the Molad, we announce date, time, and even number of hours, or number of Chalakim. When it comes to the counting of months are comprised of either 29 or 30 days. We don't take into account the number of hours. Look at Rashi, the Kidesh Chodesh, Bikarbanos, Ma Chodesh Kidusho Echa Miminuya Biyom Rosh Chodesh Shum Makrivin, Zman Ukvalam Echa Minayam Shum Nibna Al Yadam. So we'll say, so the way the months are reckoned is by number of days. And the way you sanctify a month is how? By sanctifying one of those very units which made up the month, which is why we have Rosh Chodesh. And what is Rosh Chodesh? What is Rosh Chodesh? It's one unit of the unit, or 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, but one unit of the units which make up a month, and we sanctify one of those units, i.e. Rosh Chodesh, and in the Beis HaMikdash, you would bring specific karbanos for Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, we'll say, why is this important? So listen to this. So Amra Torah, Mana Yamim V'Kidesh Chodesh, Mana Yamim V'Kidesh Atzeres. So too again, when it comes to Shavuos, you have to go ahead and sanctify Shavuos by sanctifying one of its units. Now, Rabbi said, this is fascinating. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Ma Chodesh L'Minuyav, Af Atzeres L'Minuyav. Just like by the month, a month is made up of a bunch of individual units. We call them days. And when you go and you sanctify Rosh Chodesh, how do you sanctify Rosh Chodesh? How do you sanctify it? By sanctifying one of its units 1 days. So too, when we look at Shavuos, we look at the units of which Shavuos is made up of. We'll say, what is Shavuos made up of? Weeks. Sheva Shabbosos Timimos. Right? We count towards Shavuos by units of weeks. So too, when you sanctify Shavuos, what do you sanctify? A unit of time which made up the counting of Shavuos. What's a unit of time? A week. And therefore you see that Shavuos itself, the Yom Tov itself, is actually sanctified for a week. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, the Yom Tov is sanctified for a week, but what it does mean is the Yom Tov is a day, but then there is a week of time in which you could go ahead and bring the Karbanos HaChag. So let's say, if you take a look at Rashi says, Afat Seres, Havaz Karbanosel, be'echal mimin Yonah. V'hari hi nimnis al yedei shavuim shene'emar sheva shabasim. So it's a fascinating argument, or not an argument, fascinating idea. Just like a month is made up of units, and the sanctification of the month is the sanctification of one of those units, i.e. a day of Rosh Chodesh, that creates a paradigm. So too Shavuos is also made up of units. What are the units of Shavuos? Weeks. And therefore, how do you sanctify the Yom Tov of Shavuos? By sanctifying a unit, sanctifying a week. So from here you see that even though the observance of the Yom Tov is only for a day, there's a quasi-observance, a carbonic observance that extends for a week. So Gemara says, 1 second, Ema Tzeres Chada Yoma, but I don't understand. Why don't you just say that by Shavuos it's also for a day? Because we'll say, well, it's true that Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos, but what else does the Torah say by Shavuos? Tisperu Chamishim Yom. Right? Shavuos is not just tracked by weeks, it's also tracked by days. So why don't you say, how do you know you sanctify a week? Maybe you sanctify a day. Maybe you sanctify a day and that's it. Amar Rava. Atu atzeres yomi maninon, shavuos lo maninon. But again, Rava said, but 1 second. You know that it's not enough just to count Shavuos by days. You have to count Shavuos by weeks as well. The Amar Mar mitzvah lemimne yomei u'mitzvah lemimne shavuos. There is a mitzvah to count days. By Siras Omer, there's a mitzvah to count days, and there's a mitzvah to count weeks. Va'od, furthermore, Chag Shavuos ksiv. Rabbi said, this is incredible. What's the name of the Yom Tiv? What's the name of the Yom Tiv? Right? Chag, the festival of weeks. So therefore, again, Rabbi say, this is the approach of the Tanakh. Now, what I want to point out is, no one's arguing on the bottom line. The bottom line is that, interestingly enough, the one day Yom Tiv has a week of Tashlumin. The Shaila just is where we're learning that out from. So the first opinion will say we're learning it out from the comparison to the Yom Tiv of Pesach, because all the Yom Tovim are mentioned in one pasuk together. Just like Pesach has 7 days of Tashlumin, so too the Shavuos has 7 days of Tashlumin. The Tanakama, Reb Shimon are going to say, no, we learn it out because it's called Chag Shavuos, and since the Yom Tiv is counted by units of weeks, yes, in addition to units of days, but clearly the primary identity of, or the primary unit is weeks. V'haraya, the name of the Yom Tiv is Shavuos. So just like Rosh Chodesh is made up of units and you sanctify one unit, so too Shavuos is made up of units. You sanctify one unit, which is a week, which tells that you have a week of Tashlumin from the Yom Tov. Beautiful. So we'll say that concludes that sugya. We'll say now what the Gemara is going to go back and do is dissect the Bryce a little bit. Remember again, on the bottom of Daled Amud Aleph onto Daled Amud Beis, the Brisa spoke about all of the different things that are subject to the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher. So we're going to go through that list now, and the Gemara is going to question that. Amongst that list, the Gemara said, Pesach, right? Pesach, the Gemara, so the way the Brisa read was as follows, that if you don't bring your carbon Pesach within 3 regalim, you're over on Baal Ta'acher. The Gemara says, what? Pesach bar mikra b'regalimu. We'll say, you can only bring your carbon Pesach when? On Pesach. Right, Erev Pesach, right? There's no, Rashi says, Pesach bar mikra b'regalim, the kamar leitana lehel, bebal ta'achar the shalosh regalim, for re'ini yochal akriva, elabiyah dalabit Nisan. There's only one time to bring Karban Pesach, on the 14th of Nisan. So what are you talking about Karban Pesach and the subject of Baal Ta'acher? The Gemara says, Pesach zimna kaviyale, I akreve, vilo akreve, itchile. Both say there are certain things in life where there's a make-up date, and there are certain things in life where if you miss the opportunity is done. Karban Pesach is one of the latter. At the end of the day, you have a window. The window is the 14th of Nisan. You offer it up on the 14th of Nisan. Great. You don't. You're done. There's no Baal Ta'acher because at the end of the day, there's no prolonged window. What are you talking about? Someone of Chisda, no. Pesach Kedei Nasba. So it's very interesting. So Rav Chisda says, the truth is you're right. The Tana just got a little carried away. You know how it is. When you start talking about karbanos, like you can't stop, right? So it says, Ola, Shlomim, everything starts flowing. Pesach this, but he didn't really mean Pesach, which is an interesting answer. He didn't really mean Pesach. He just got kind of caught up in the energy of the karbanic moment, and Pesach just slipped out. But he didn't actually mean it. Okay. So the Gemara Rav Sheshes Amar, no. I don't like that answer. Rather, my Pesach, Shalmei Pesach. Pesach, Rabosai, doesn't mean Karban Pesach. Remember, on Pesach, there are many other karbanos that are brought. What are Shalmei Pesach? Shalmei Pesach are Shalmei Chagiga. Right? Remember again, we're going to come to the base of Mikdash and Meir Hashem Bekarav on Yom Tiv. And if it's Pesach, for argument's sake, if it's Pesach, you're going to shech your Karban Pesach on Erev Yom Tiv. But there's also other Karbanos, like Shalmei Chagiga. Shalmei Chagiga is how you would have meat on Yom Tiv when you were in Yerushalayim. You would offer up a Karban Shlamim, right? Part of it goes on the Mizbeach, part of it goes to the Kohanim, a large part of it goes to me, the Yisrael owner, and that's how I eat meat over Pesach. Oh, that's the Gemara talking about. The Brayso is talking about a case where you neglected to offer up your Shalmei Chagiga, right? Or Olas, you forgot to offer up your other Yom Tov associated Karbanos on Pesach. So Pesach doesn't mean Karban Pesach. Pesach means other Pesach Yomim Tovim Karbanos. So the Gemara says, Ihachi Hainu Shlamim. So that's fine, but the Brisa said Shlamim. That's the same case. Right? We'll say Shalmei Chagiga are Shlamim. So the Brisa said, if you neglected to offer up your Karban Shlamim, you have whatever amount of time you have until you're in violation of Baal Ta'acher. So why the need to mention Pesach? I'll tell you why. Tana Shlamim Haba Machmas Pesach. The Tana Shlamim Haba Machmas Atzman. To which the Gemara says as follows. To which the Gemara is supposed to say, by the way, Rashi just points out over here something very interesting. Rashi says, what's the case where you didn't offer up your Shalmei Chagiga of Pesach on Pesach? See, he gives an interesting case. We'll see why he interprets it this way. Rashi says, if you take a look at last Rashi enough, Shalmei Pesach, Bishalo Karav Bizmano, Sha'avad V'niskaper Ba'acher, Hu Na'aseh Shlamim, Hu Na'aseh Shlamim. We'll say, so Rashi says, what's the case? The case is it's Pesach. I have an animal set aside for my Shalmei Chagiga. Then what happens? It runs away. I lost it. I replace it with another animal, offer up that Shalmei Chagiga, and lo and behold, what happens afterwards? I find it. What's the status of the animal? That animal is a Karban Shlamim. So we'll say, so the Gemara asks, okay, if it's a Shlamim, you already have another, Shlamim is already explicitly mentioned in the Brisa. Why the need to mention both? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. We have to mention Shlamim from Pesach and regular Shlamim for the following reason. Sagdai Tchamino, you would have thought, Hoil umachmas Pesach ka'asu amadeis ki Pesach damu. So I might have thought as follows. I might have thought that any carbon that is associated with Yom Tov of Pesach kind of is linked to the halachos of Karban Pesach. And I both say, what happens if you have an animal set aside for Karban Pesach that you did not offer on Pesach itself, so it's subject to Baal Ta'achar immediately after Yom Tov of Pesach? I might have thought that the Shlamim of of Pesach should also be in violation of Baal Ta'achar immediately after the Yom Tov of Pesach. Kamash Malon not. Kamash Malon, that if you have Shlamim of the Yom Tov of Pesach left over out, you didn't offer it up on Pesach for whatever the reason, halacha l'maisa, they're treated like regular shlamim and only become subject to Baal Ta'acher after some later time, depending on our 5-week machlokes. Good. So the Gemara says, "Hani from where do we know this?" So both say, so interestingly enough, the Brisa listed an exhaustive list of items that are subject to Baal Ta'acher, right? So it was, most remember again, we'll go through the list very quickly. Damin, a person pledges their value ultimately to the Beis HaMikdash. Erchin, which is Erech vows. Charamim, make something cherim, you give it to the Beis HaMikdash. Hekdeshos, hekdish. Chataos, ashamos, olos, shlamim. Tzedakos, which are tzedakah vows. Maisrus, bechar, meiser, Pesach, leket, shichacha, and Peah. Very long list. All of these items, if you fail to bring them, to give them in a timely manner, you are in violation of Baal Ta'acher. The Gemara says, how do you know that? How do you know? Both say, and the reason we're going to ask that is because we're going to see that the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher was stated in a very specific context, namely neder. The Torah says this is in Devarim Chaf Gimel Chaf Beis. If you have the psukim on the side of your Gemara, you're going to see it. Ki stidar neder l'Hashem Elokecha lo sacher l'shamo. If you make a neder, don't delay in giving your neder. So let's go through this. So how do I know that all of these items mentioned in the Brisa are actually subject to the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher? The Tan Rabbanon, here we go. Ki stidar neder. When you'll make a neder, Torah says, do not delay in fulfilling your neder. Ainli el neder I only know a neder, nidava minayin. How do I know that it even applies to a nidava? So say, remember again, two different offerings. Neder is a vow, nidava is just a voluntary offering. Salocha lemaisa, I only know that a neder is subject to Baal Ta'acher. How do I know that a nidava is as well? Ne'emar kan neder, v'ne'emar lahalon in neder o nidava. Because we'll say, it says neder over here, but in a different pasuk, it says, right, im neder o nidava karbano. Right? Ultimately, that's talking about nosar. So it links neder and nidava. Ma lahalon nidava imo, just like in a second context, nidava is mentioned together with neder. Afkan nidava imo. So too over here, when it says neder, we understand that neder and nidava are linked together. Which I will say is a limud we find very often. Neder and nidava are often concepts that are always linked together. So as soon as we find that linkage in one place, the Gemara says we assume that linkage applies in other situations as well. La Hashem Elokecha, the pasuk says to Hashem your God. So we'll say, remember, all of this is the drasha of the pasuk Dvarim Chaf Gimel Chaf Beis. Ki sidar neder la Hashem Elokecha lo sa'acher l'shalmo. When you make a neder to Hashem your God, do not delay in giving it. So that's the pasuk about Ta'acher. Baal Ta'acher, lo sa'acher, do not delay. So we're darshaning that pasuk. Next, La Hashem Elokecha. When it said to Hashem your God, what does that refer to? Elu hadamin ha'erchen ha'charamin v'ha'ekdeshos. This refers to, I will say, if a person goes ahead and pledges his value, that's damin. Erchen means your erech value, which is an objective value in halacha. Charamim, which are the chayrim amounts, right? The person makes a chayrim to the Beis HaMikdash. And hekdeshos, making something hekdish. So we'll say, La Hashem Elokecha includes all of these items that they are subject to Baal Ta'acher. Lo sa'acher l'shamo, do not delay in paying that. Hu velo chilufa. So we'll discuss what that means. That the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher only applies to the item itself and not to something for which you exchange it. Now we'll see exactly what that means in the Gemara a little bit later. Ki darosh yidrashenu, because the Chosh Baruch says, for I will seek it out from you. What does that refer to? Elu chatos ashamos, olos, ushlamim. That refers ultimately again to all of these psukim. I will say, how does that now? Ki daroshi dreshenu. That refers to the items that you're obligated to bring. So achatas and asham and all the shlamim referring to obligatory offerings. Hashem Elokecha, Hashem your God. Elu tzedakos umaistros ubachar. This refers ultimately again tzedakos, which is the tzedakah vow, maestros, and your bachar offering. Again, we'll discuss exactly what that means as well. So the pasuk says, me'imach, from you, zeleket shichacha upeya. That refers ultimately again to leket shichacha and peya. So also remember again, leket shichacha peya, interestingly enough, is in a different category. Because remember again, leket shichacha and peya refers to agricultural items, or right? Remember again, shecha you leave behind the bundle, peya you have to leave behind the corner, leket you drop individual stalks. So remember again, who do these belong to? These belong to the aniyim, to the poor. But even when it comes to everything else up until now has really been dealing with, not everything, true, this bachar is also to the kohen, not to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Lamais, it's saying that Baal Ta'acher applies even to other charitable commitments. Where do I learn that? Mi'imach, from the things that have to come from you. Tzara first, like a shecha and peya. Shabbos says, interestingly enough, which is really quite fascinating, the Gemara just darshaned all the items in the Brisa from the pasuk of Baal Ta'acher. Quite amazing. Rashi elaborates on the drashas a bit more. How exactly? You see the drashas, but for our purposes, this is sufficient. Vayabachachet. So we'll say this is incredible. How does the pasuk end? Vayabachachet. Now, what does that mean? Vayabachachet, that there will be sin in you. What that means is, if you fail to offer up or to give your karbanos or your other obligations in a timely fashion, v'haya b'cha chet, you will be in violation of Baal Ta'acher. So we'll say the Gemara makes an amazing drasha. V'haya b'cha chet v'lo b'karbancha chet. Interestingly enough, what does it mean? It means you will be in violation, but not your karban. Now we'll say, now what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. V'lo b'karban chachet, in a karban nifsal l'kach. Now we'll say, it's very interesting. Even once you violate Baal Ta'acher, the karban is not invalid. For example, I was supposed to bring a chatas, right? I accidentally violated Shabbos, chas v'shalom. I was supposed to bring a carbon chatas. I'm supposed to bring it. Let's just go with the simple approach to Tanakama. I have 3 regalim in order to bring my carbon chatas. And what happens? I didn't. For whatever the reason, I did not get my carbon chatas done in time. So we'll say, what's now my status? What's my status? I'm in violation of Baal Ta'acher. What's the status of the carbon? Totally fine. In other words, I still have to bring it, and the carbon itself is not invalidated as a result of the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher. So we'll say, actually, this is is actually an incredibly profound idea in this statement. We'll say, if you take a look at the words, V'haya b'cha chet, v'lo b'karbancha chet. What's the Musar Haskell? Even in life, when it's haya b'cha chet, right? Even at the end of the day, when I am, chet doesn't really mean sin. Chet really means deficient. Chet means a void or an absence. Even in life where it's haya b'cha chet, that I am in a state of absence, I am in a state of sin, lo b'karbancha chet. Never think that your ability to come karov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, never think that is deficient or lacking. So you say sometimes in life, it's haya b'cha. I'm not in a good place. I'm just not in a good place. I'm not living the way I'm supposed to live. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And I know it. I know that I'm just not where I need to be. And sometimes when it's haya b'cha, we view ourselves as damaged goods and therefore unable to come close to HaKodesh Baruch Hu. But the Gemara says that's not true. Even when it's v'haya b'chachet, even when you're in a state of chet, v'lo b'karban chachet. The ability to be a karban, the ability to come karov, the ability to go ahead and establish a closeness with HaKodesh Baruch Hu is independent of where you're holding in life. The Rebbe Shalom makes no restrictions on coming close to Him. He doesn't say you have to be holy. He doesn't say you have to be good. He doesn't say you have to be in a good place in life. Wherever you are, the ability to be a karban, wherever you are, the ability to be karov always exists. Such an incredible mantra. V'haya b'chachet, even if that's true, ein b'karban chachet. The ability to become karov is never absent, never lacking, and never deficient. Such a yesod. Amar Mar, lo sa'acher l'shama hu v'lo chilufav. So let's analyze this next statement. We said, the pasuk says, do not delay in going ahead and l'shama, and literally paying your debt, your carbonic debt. Hu v'lo chilufav. It only applies to the carbon itself, but not to what it's exchanged for. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Chilufei mai. Exchange, what's been exchanged? Ichilufei ola ushlamim mikra v'krivi. So we'll say, let's analyze this. If you're talking about the following situation, I will say, now Rashi explains this case the way we explained the Shlama on Pesach and Amar Aleph. So if you're talking about a case where I had an ola or a shlamim, right? I had an ola or a shlamim. And then what happens? And then let's say I lost the carbon, replaced it with another, and then found the original one. We'll say, what's the halacha of a lost ola and shlamim that were then found? What's their status? They're shlamim, right? They're shlamim or ola, right? In other words, you could offer it out. If you're talking about the exchange of a chatas, that what happened over here? I had a carbon chatas, I lost my chatas, got a new chatas, then found the first chatas. So we'll say, what happens to that first chatas? What happens? It's left to die. Right? That's one of those strange cases where the carbon, essentially, the animal is just locked up and left to die. So when we talk about a case of an exchange, or an exchange, but I want to point out, when we normally talk about exchange, you think about tamura. Over here, again, it's not a tamura case. This is a case where I had an animal, lost the animal, replaced the animal, and found the original animal. So what's the case? Chilufei toda. It's a case of, I'll say, of a carbon toda. So what happened over here? Again, I will say, the case is very simple. Halacha l'maisa, I had a carbon toda, lost my carbon toda, found a new carbon toda, and then what happens? Rashi says, chilufei toda, ukigon shenis arba berishona. The two carbonos get mixed up with each other. So I will say, now watch this. Now, what's unique about a carbon toda? This is very interesting. So the Gemara says, the Tani Rabbi Chia, toda shenis arba bitmurasa. If a toda gets mixed up with its replacement animal, umeisa achas mehen, and one of them died. Right? One of them died. So we'll say, so now what happens? Now one of them died. But what's the problem? You don't know which animal died. Right? What was it? The original Toda? Was it the Tzmura animal? So what happens? The leftover Toda, there's nothing to do with it. Why? What should we do? Likriva, so you'll say, we'll just offer it up. Well, here's the problem. A carbon Toda comes with what? 40 loaves. 40 loaves. So likriva, v'likrav lechem b'hada. So if you say offer it up and offer the bread with it, you can't do that. Why? Dilma Tzmurahi. Because maybe that's not the real Toda. And Abba say, the problem with bringing loaves, if you remember, Abba say, you can't bring unconsecrated things that don't belong as part of the sacrificial service. That's called being makdish chulin ba'azara, which carries a little thing called misa along with it. So if you don't know definitively that this is the carbon toda, you cannot bring the loaves along with it. So therefore, again, I could offer it up, but I can't bring the loaves. Well, if you can't bring the loaves, that's not a carbon toda. So the Gemara says, likrava below lechem. So you'll say, fine, offer it up without the lechem. Dilma todahu. Perhaps it's the toda, and you can't offer up a toda, v'hakevan, the less, and you can't bring a toda without carbon, without bread. So we just have a catch-22 over here. On one hand, I can't bring the bread because I don't know definitively that this is the carbon toda. I can't offer it up without the bread because then it's a deficient toda. So what should I do? V'hakevan, the less bahakravahi, so the Gemara says, v'hakevan, the lav basakravahi, so again, why do I need a pasuk to exclude this case? It's obvious that you can't offer it up. And I was about to say, it is obvious that you can't offer up this carbon. There is nothing to do about this carbon. Remember again, the Toda and its Temura gets mixed up together. One of them dies. I don't know which one died and which one is alive. The Gemara simply says, there is no takana for the leftover animal, simply because I don't know what to do with the bread, and there is no carbon toda without the bread. Therefore, you can't offer it up. So the Gemara says, if you can't offer it up, why do I need a pasuk to exclude that case? To which the Gemara says, you're right. The pasuk is coming to exclude the exchange for Ola and Shlamim. But I will say, we just said before that the exchange for Ola Shlamim has the status of Ola and Shlamim. So what do I need? Let me to the Gemara says, what's the case? Listen to this. Kigon sha'avru alav shnei regalim v'humam v'chilalu al achar. I will say, this is fascinating. Listen to this case. Let's say you have a Shlamim. And what happens? Two regalim passed by. So you say to yourself, no problem. I still have what? A third regal. No problem. After the second regal, your shlamim develops a mum. Now it can't be offered. Still not a problem. What do? You go ahead and redeem it, right? Purchase a new animal that you're going to use as shlamim. But say, listen to this shaila. Sagadait chamina. I would have thought hoel umikoach kamai kaasi kiman da'avru alav gimel regalim dami. Rabbi say, listen to this fascinating case. See, here you go. We have a shlamim now that went past two regalim. And now again develops a mum. I need to redeem it. I redeem it. No, not a problem. Happens all the time. Transfer the sanctity, buy a new animal, have a new shlamim. But let's say, here's the shaila. When does the clock for Baal Ta'acher begin with this new shlamim? Isn't that fascinating, shaila? So I would have assumed that when does the clock start? From shlamim number 1. Because at the end of the day, shlamim number 2 is not really a brand new independent shlamim. What is shlamim number 2? What is it? It's really a replacement for shlamim number 1. Therefore, it should be governed by the clock, the Baal Ta'acher clock of number 1. Kamashmala, no. Incredible. Kamashmala, no. That amazingly enough, when you go ahead and now you have that new replacement shlamim, the Baal Ta'acher clock is restarted. Pretty incredible. Rabbi Meir, Damar Kevan Sha'abar Lav Regal Achar over Baal Ta'acher, Ma'ikala Meimar. But according to Rabbi Meir, who says that once you go ahead and one regal passes, you're in violation of Baal Ta'acher. What is there to say? What's the case? The case according to Meir is what? Where the animal, the shlamim, developed a mum during Yom Tiv. And then you go ahead and you redeem it, but you didn't offer it. And now, and that Yom Tiv passes, you would have thought what? You might have thought that since the second carbon is a replacement for the first, therefore it's covered by the Baal Ta'acher clock of the first. No. So we'll say the bottom line, according to both opinions, although the manifestation of it is different, is that Allah said this is really fascinating. Whatever you hold the Baal Ta'achar clock is, if for some reason your animal is maimed, it has a mum, and therefore you have to replace it, right? You replace it with a new animal, the Baal Ta'achar clock is reset from the time that the new animal is inaugurated as the replacement carbon. You might have thought the Havamina was that Allah Lamaisa, the Baal Ta'achar clock of the replacement animal, should really be governed by the original animal, since the replacement is a replacement of the original one. Kamash Malon, that if you have to replace the animal because of legitimate purposes, like a mum, halacha lemaisa, the Baal Ta'achar clock is restarted with the new animal. So we'll stop over here. We'll continue with the analysis of the Brisa tomorrow. Yeah, it's very true. I didn't think about that, right? It's a din in timeliness. Beautiful. The truth is,